So welcome everyone to today's Index seminars. We have Professor Dr. Prasad Joshi today. He is a professor at the Department of Sanskrit and Lexicography at the Deccan Institute in Pune. His interests include Paaninian grammar, linguistic analysis, Sanskrit of course, and lexicography. He's been working on a big dictionary project on Sanskrit and Marathi for the last several years. With this introduction, I will let Dr. Joshi take over. Please proceed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prasad and my dear friends, for participating in this seminar. So greetings to all of you. Namaskar. Today in this presentation, I plan to discuss the Paaninian model of language description and how his model, namely ādhyāyī, has played a vital role in the preservation of Sanskrit language. So this is the plan of the presentation, and so language study began in India with a purpose to the sacred language of the Vedas. All of you are certainly aware of the fact that the Vedas are the ancient available literature of the world, of the mankind. And long ago, in those early days, the language itself, which was a means of communication, the purpose of language is basically to communicate things, ideas in our mind. But in the context of Vedic studies, considered not only the means of communication as a means of communication, but much more, it was considered as a means to propitiate or gratify the deities. And that was the main instrumental function of the language, that it was not merely a means of communication, but it was used, especially the mantras, the Vedic mantras, the entire language, that was considered as a means to gratify the Vedic deities. Now the means has to be very perfect to achieve the desired effect. So that is why utmost care was taken that this means, namely the language in which the Vedic mantras are embodied, should be perfect, very perfect. There should not be any deviation from the standard form, etc. So there are certain statements like mantro hinaha svarato varnato va mithya prayukto natamarthamaho, which means if a mantra, Vedic mantra, sacred formula, if it is uttered wrongly, incorrectly, even if with a slight change of a mora, hair's breadth change is there, then it will not convey the intended meaning. So there should not be change even of a syllable, even of a speech sound, length, intonation, everything has to be as it is handed down from the oral tradition. So utmost care was given to the proper pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. And that is why the preservation of language gained particular importance in those early days. So with a view to preserve the language as it is and to hand over to the next generation was the prime concern of those Vedic rishis or seers. Out of this necessity to preserve the language in its every component, every smallest unit, there emerged 6 sciences. Let us have a look at that. Chandas, The Vedic language was composed in meters. There were certain meters, or we may say like poetry, and in various meters they were composed, like Anushtup, Trishtup. So the knowledge of the meters was very necessary, because meters, that was the means to calculate the exact syllables in that particular mantra. So even a single syllable is lost, then meter is disturbed. So to preserve the Vedic text, the knowledge of meters was necessary. So out of that, all the characteristics of different meters were handed down, were written down, noted down, and that gave rise to the science of Chandas, or prosody, we may say. Nirukta, actually, it can be referred to as the first attempt of lexicography or dictionary, word list. Nighantu was the word list, and Nighantu is the treatise in which difficult words of the Vedas were listed down. And Nirukta is the commentary on Nighantu. Nighantu means collection of words. And Yaska, sometimes before 4th century BC, Yaska commented on these words, different words, and he provides a derivation of those words. Say, for example, take up any word. What might be the root in that word and how that word is derived. So he goes to the root of the word. In fact, we find all the major principles of word study, lexicography or dictionary in the very treatise of Nirukta. Then Shiksha, what can be described as ancient Indian phonetics. Shikshas are the works devoted to the articulation of speech sounds. The Shikshakaras say, what is Shiksha? It is a manual how to pronounce, how to articulate correct speech sounds. So language is continuous utterance. It is assemblage of different sentences. Sentences are analyzed into words. Words are analyzed into the smallest part of phonemes. So Shiksha's, their prime concern was to teach the articulation of speech sounds. Ka, cha, ta, ta, pa. These are the sounds. So how they are, what are the places of articulation in our mouth? The manners of articulation. Say for example, pa is a bilabial sound articulated or produced through closure of lips, and the pressure is built behind the lips, and suddenly the pressure is released and pa, plosive, is produced. So this is the manner and also the place where it is produced. It is produced at the region of lips, Oshtyavarana. It is said Shiksha is what? Vacha Uchcharane Vidhim. The manner, vidhi, of the articulation of vach, that is speech sounds. But they refer to many other things also. The tone, swara, quality, length, short, long, prolated. These are the qualities of utterance, speech sounds. Then degree of closure, approximate, full closure is there whatsoever. Similarly, tempo, sama and santana. These are the features of articulation which are very thoroughly discussed in the Shiksha Granthas or the Shiksha treatise. So we find actually the ancient Indian phonetics in the Shiksha treatises. Now coming to Pratishakhya, which are Pratishakyas or the Pratishakhya Granthas, these manuals, they are always referred along with Shikshas. Pratishakyas actually, they teach the phonological processes or necessary phonological statements which pertain to particular Vedic essentials are recorded in Pratishakyas. So Shikshas, they are very general. They are concerned with entire range of articulation. Whatever sounds, speech sounds are possible through human physiology, those are described in Shikshas. But Pratishakyas are restricted to particular recensions of Vedas. Rigveda Pratishakya. So every recension of Vedas has its own particular specific manners, specifications are there of articulation, of pronunciation, and those are recorded in Pratishakyas. Those Pratishakyas are specific. Then we come to the Padapatha. Padapatha is actually word analysis. The Samhita Patha or Samhita means continuous utterance of Vedic mantras. Say for example, Agni Mile Purohitam Yajnasya Devam Rutvijam. What I said is the first mantra of the Rigveda. It is uttered continuously without break. But the Pathas, they actually separate each word and they analyze the entire sentence into its words. So Padapathas actually, each word is separated in Padapathas, and here actually we find beginning of grammatical analysis, very systematic analysis of continuous utterance into its components, into its parts. So Agnim, Ile, then Purohitam is a word. Again, there are two components. So Puras and Hitam, then there will be employed one Avagraha, Danda. So word boundaries are recognized and they are marked very systematically in the Padapathas. Going ahead further, if there is any internal division of a word, then it is also marked by a means of Avagraha. So internal analysis and also the external or boundary analysis was also initiated, was also described very perfectly, very systematically in the Padapathas. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that how language study had many facets, had many branches like that, Shiksha, Pratishakhya, Nirukta, Chandas. So it was actually great consideration was given to the language study. This all tradition is pre-Paaninian tradition. Before Paanini it happened. That means roughly it is 6th century BCE, we may say. Of course, chronology changed, but there are certain internal evidences and other things, other parameters on which very competent scholars, they have tried to ascertain approximate dates of these ancient works. So roughly we may say that sometimes before 6th century BCE, these 6 ancillary sciences might have emerged. Now coming to Paanini, this is the background of Paanini. Actually, before Paanini, what was the tradition of language study and how it was there something we must have got some rough idea. Now, coming to Panini. Panini belonged to 4th century BCE. Actually, there are certain evidences, internal evidences to come to this conclusion. But again, this issue is also debated. But Panini refers to certain words like Kumara Shramana and others, through which, and this is taking this as the basis, some scholars argue that Panini belonged to 4th century BC, roughly after the Buddha. Now, where was Panini? It is believed that Shalatura, the region in northwest of Indian subcontinent, was the place of origin of Panini. Shalatura is referred to as Shalatura, coming from Shalatura. Panini himself refers to certain regions in his ādhyāyī, and those regions like Udakcha Vipashaha, the river, etc. But roughly, many competent scholars are of the conclusion that it was the northern side of the river Ravi, sorry, and there actually was the place from where Panini comes, northwest region, Shalatura. He's also referred to by different names. Dakshi Putra. Dakshi must be the name of his mother. How the word Panini is derived? Maybe Panin was the name of his forefather, some of maybe predecessors. Panin, descendant of Panin is Panina, and descendant of Panina is Panini. So patronymic word is that Panini. So this is something about the where and when about of Panini. Now let us come to the main point, his work. Actually, what we saw just before, how the language analysis started, Padapathas, Pratishakyat, Shikshas. So great consideration was there before Panini. But very systematic analysis of language, actually, the pinnacle of language analysis, one must say, was reached in the ādhyāyī, which Bloomfield describes the greatest monument of human intellect. Just let us see the pictures of actually the ādhyāyī. The word itself suggests that it is composed of 8 chapters, Ashta Adhyaya. There are 8 chapters, and each chapter is divided into 4 quarters. The Ashtadhyayi is composed in a sutra manner or sutra form. What is a sutra? Sutra is an aphorism, or it is a short formula. In the Ashtadhyayi, actually we have 3,983 short formulae, aphorisms or sutras, we may say, short statements, and they are very short, very brief, very taciturn in expression. But even if they are very short in expression, the purport is very large, very big. The sutras or the aphorisms are devoid of verb. They are verbless utterances. And the entire Ashtadhyayi, actually we have topic division in the Ashtadhyayi. There are certain other associating words of Ashtadhyayi, like Ganapatha, which includes the different sets of words, finite sets, infinite sets. Dhatu Patha, which is a list of verbal roots, linganushasana, the instructions in grammatical gender, and also Paaninian Shiksha, which right now we refer to. So these are the other associated works. Unadi Patha also. Unadi Patha is another work which includes some suffixes, some affixes, which are to be attached to the verbal roots and words are to be derived. Fit sutras are also there. Fit sutras are the aphorisms which teach certain affixations to the nouns. So, and they also describe the tone or the accent of the nominal forms. So these are the associated works for ādhyāyī. Now, what actually is ādhyāyī? It is a model. It is a device to derive the word forms, correct word forms. It is designed in a particular way as to derive the words from the basis. So Paanini presumes division of words in his own manner. Suppose the word pathati is there. Pathati means one reads. So Paanini analyzes the word pathati, one reads, into its components. Certain part is regarded as the base. Certain part is regarded as affixation. And how from the basis, through the process of affixation, the word is derived. So basically it is a model which provides derivational rules, and it is designed in a particular way that from basis the finite forms are derived. By finite forms, we mean the forms which have affixations. Inflected suffixes are there, like pathati, one reads, one goes, ramaha, devaha, devi. All these nominal and verbal forms are there. How they are derived? So Paanini provides for that. And these are the forms which are considered as correct forms, correct speech forms. And how to derive them, Paanini provides the model for that. So this is the ādhyāyī. Now, what is the purpose of ādhyāyī? Coming to that, purpose of grammar itself. Patanjali authored commentary on Paanini's ādhyāyī, maybe 200 years after Paanini. So in the introductory chapter of the Mahabhashya, which is the great comment by Patanjali, Patanjali states certain prayojanas, that is purpose of studying grammar, purpose of studying shabdanushasana, what he calls instruction in words, that is ādhyāyī or grammar. So the first and foremost purpose of shabdanushasana, study of grammar, he says raksha, uha, agama. But raksha, that means preservation, is the basic purpose of grammar. Now, preservation of what? By preservation, he certainly means the preservation of sacred language. And one who is not aware of the base, the affixation, the augmentation, and many other things, the elision of an element. So all the components, if one is unaware of these components, then he cannot pronounce the correct word. So one has to learn grammar or shabdanushasana and the knowledge of correct word. So the knowledge of the correct speech form and also usage, not only knowledge, jnane prayoge, even the employment or the usage of correct word. So knowledge and use of correct word leads to merit, punya or dharma, which ultimately leads to moksha or salvation, which is always there in the which is always the prime aim of mankind in Indian tradition. So if one has to achieve the salvation, moksha, he has to incur the merit, and to incur merit, the means is to understand correct language, correct usage, to know the correct use and correct usage, and uh, correct knowledge and usage of correct word is considered as prime concern. So raksha, that is preservation of language, was the means. Now actually question may arise, which form is to be considered as correct form? Which form of language, which dialect of language is standard language or considered as correct language than the other? Everyone is aware that language is very dynamic and it changes every after 10 miles. कोस कोस पे पानी बदले दस कोस पे वाणी. Hindi saying is that every after miles, taste of water is changed, and every after 10 miles, language is changed. So language variations are there, regional variations are there. Even as time goes on, in the due course of time, we have different varieties also. So which form is to be considered as standard form, or correct form? So in the tradition, normally the form which was selected or spoken by the learned people, shishta, cultured people, was considered as the correct form or standard form. In the Shankhayana Brahmana, which is a Vedic work, there is a reference that Udicham Dishi Pradnyatatara va Uchyate Udvite. So in the region of northern part of India, Indian subcontinent, the standard form was the cultured form, correct form, the cultured or very furnished form was spoken. So that was considered as the standard form. And Paanini, while describing the language which was prevalent at his time, he selected the variety that was spoken in the northwestern belt of Indian subcontinent. He refers to that as bhasha. Bhasha means which was spoken there. Of course, Paanini describes the Vedic language, which was probably falling in disuse at his time, archaic language of Vedas. He refers to that variety of language also in several of his sutras, aphorisms. But main purpose of ādhyāyī was to describe the speech form, the speech variety, which was spoken in the northwest part of India, which was considered as the spoken form of learned people, shishta. So this is something about the form which Paanini probably described in his ādhyāyī. Now, what is ādhyāyī? It is a set of rules. It is a set of rules. Some rules are general and exceptions are there. So it is a systematic body of rules and exceptions. Roughly 4,000 rules are there. Just now I refer to that. So ādhyāyī provides us a set of rules. Very general rules known as utsarga, and there are exceptions, apavada rules. The apavada rules, they have privilege over the general rules. And now the nature of rules, let us have an idea of how the rules are there. What is the nature of these Paaninian rules? These rules are verbless. We do not have any verb as such in these rules. And they are very systematically articulated. Each rule has 3 components, maximum 3. The rule describes the vidhi, operation, grammatical operation. The base or the linguistic atom which is liable for that operation is also mentioned. And third thing is the context, environment or nimitta in which that operation is to be taken place. Let us take one example. Consider the rule Iko yan achi. Iko yan achi. There are 3 things in the rule. What is an ik? Iko. Ikaha means that refers to vowels. I, U, R, and Lu. These are the 4 vowels which are referred to by the abbreviatory term ik. So ik is the linguistic atom upon which some operation is taught. Now what is that operation? Operation is yan. Ik vowels are replaced by yan. Yan are the semi vowels. Ya, va, ra, and la. These are the semi vowels for which Paanini uses the term yan. Now look at that. How Paanini is coining the abbreviatory terms. Actually, there are 14 sutras or 14 aphorisms are there, which describe the speech sounds or the phonemic inventory is there, described in 14 rules. Ayuna, Rurluk, Eong, Iouch, Hayavarat, Lan, Yamagananam, like that. So the 14 rules provide us the phonemic inventory of Sanskrit language. And based on these 14 rules, Paanini has coined 42 abbreviatory terms. Ach is a term which means vowels. Hal is a term which refers to consonants. So yan is the term for semi vowels. So coming back, Iko yan, that means ik vowel are replaced by yan. Achi, achi means ach means vowels. What is the context? What is the nimitta? What is the environment if that ik is followed by ach? That means vowel. So ik vowels will be replaced by semi vowels provided they are followed by other vowels than ik itself. So look at that. Look at the aphorism. The formula is that operation O is taken on is admissible to the linguistic atom I in the context of C. This is the formula. Iko yan achi. So it provides for infinite utterances, madhvarihi, suddhyupasyaha, etc. So Paanini has grasped actually the patterns which are finite, and he provides us formula to explain those patterns of language. So this is the nature of Paaninian rules. Types of rules. Now actually we have 6 types of rules in the ādhyāyī. Saujñā, definition. There are certain rules which provide you definitions. Paanini has used certain definitions, technical terms or saujñā names, we may say in plain sense. And the first 2 chapters, they describe saujñās and paribhashas, saujñā rules. Say the very first rule of Panini is Vruddhiradaic. The vowels A, I, and Au, they take the name Vruddhi. So Vruddhi is a name. So like that, he explains the Saudhyas or the names which are to be used in his Ashtadhyayi, in his model. So his terms are of different kinds. He has used certain etymological terms, etymological definitions. So for example, pratyaya. Actually, what explains is pratyaya, what denotes something is pratyaya, what explains some meaning is pratyaya, pratiyate, like that. Certain terms of Panini are arbitrary. They are very artificial. They do not have any lexical meaning. Like T is a term, T, which refers to the last syllable of a word. So T has no meaning outside Ashtadhyayi. It pertains to his model only. So he has his own artificial, algebraic, krutrima kind of artificial terms. But certain terms or designations or names he provides by way of enumeration, pariganana. He does not indulge himself into the functional definitions of items. Like sarvanama, what probably not exactly pronoun, but pronomina we may say. So what is a sarvanama? Sarvadini sarvanamani. The items enumerated in the list headed by the word sarva is a sarvanam. So by pariganana or enumeration, look at that how very systematically he provides us ganas or the word list and names them. So we have this kind of definition rules. Meta rules are there. Then there are heading rules. Heading rules, that means certain rules are there which start the topic. And there are major heading rules in the Ashtadhyayi. The third Adhyaya we have Pratyayadhikara. That means the word Pratyaya, suffix, affix, it continues in the following rules. And the chapter is headed by the word Pratyaya. Angadhikara. Anga is the word which is to be read in the subsequent aphorism, subsequent sutras. So all the operations which are pertaining to the base, when affixation is to be done, all those operations are listed under the heading rule Anga. Similarly, Pada is the heading rule. Samasa is the heading rule, which mark the beginning of certain topic or packages, we may say. So Ashtadhyayi is divided into certain adhikaras or topics, and heading rules are adhikara rules. Then we have another type of rules. Niyama means restriction. The scope of operation is restricted. The domain of the operation is restricted. Application is restricted by the Niyama rule. Another type of rule is Atidesha, transformation of property. Say for example, Sthanivat Adeshaha, Anal Vidhav is a rule. Sthani means the original linguistic item on which operation is to be taught. And when that original is replaced by a substitute, another substitution, linguistic item, then entire properties of the original are transferred on the substitution. So these are the transferring rules, the rules which allow to transfer the properties of one linguistic item on the another item. So these are the Atidesha rule. Then Nishedha rule or prohibition, negation. Certain operations, when they are taught, certain linguistic attempts are to be excluded from that operation, and they are mentioned in the Nishedha rules or negation rules. Apart from these rules, there are certain types of rules which are called Nipatana rules. Nipatana, what is that? Nipatana, that means laying down. Sometimes the correct forms or speech forms, they are provided as ready-made forms, finished forms, and no derivational process is taught for those forms. So for example, the word anuchana, which means a student. Actually, Panini or the grammarians are at loss to explain these forms. No part of it is not analyzed into components, some part as base, some part as affixation, nothing. But it is given as a ready-made or finished form. So there are a range of Nipatana rules. So in brief, we have 6 types of rules. What is the nature of these rules? And various scholars, they have different claims about the nature of these rules. And competent scholars, researchers, they describe these rules to be of generative nature. Actually, what is meant by generative or generation? The term is borrowed probably from mathematics, and this theory was very popular, and it was established, and proponent of this theory, Noam Chomsky, whose name is associated with the generative grammar, generative theory of grammar. But Chomskyan concept of generation, it is different from the description, or when scholars do describe rules, Paaninian rules as generative rules. That notion is probably differing from the notion which was given by which was propagated by Noam Chomsky. Actually, so far as Ashtadhyayi is concerned, it doesn't derive directly the sentence. Of course, sentence level is treated very much described in Ashtadhyayi. Entire Karaka section of theta rule, Karaka section, that describes the sentence analysis. It pertains to the sentence analysis. But basically, Panini's rules are generative for word generation, word generative rules. Because words are aimed at, and correct words, they are fit to enter into the sentence, higher unit. By generation, we mean explicit enumeration. And how many words would be there? How many utterances are there? Just infinite. You cannot count. So finite set of rules enumerating infinite utterances has the nature of generative, is the generative model, is the generative nature. So just now we have seen that how from Iko Yanachi, one single rule, many infinite utterances are provided for, and this is the generative model. This is the generative nature of Paaninian rules. Only 4,000 rules roughly. 4,000, even if I say only, still, I mean, there are many traditional scholars, even we can find some scholars in today's generation also, who can recite the entire Ashtadhyayi in an hour or two, because the rules, even if they are 4,000 as such, they are very short in expression. The last rule of Panini has only 2 syllables. So now these rules are there. is designed in a particular way. There are certain principles for application of rules, ordering of the rules. And there are two types of orders, external order and internal order for application of rules. Application of rules is governed by certain principles. The entire ādhyāyī, which has 8 chapters, the last 3 quarters of the last chapter called Tripadi, 3 quarters. And in the Tripadi, or the last 3 quarters, we have external order. I mean, as the rules are given, their order is very important. And another subsection of first ādhyāyā, and there also we find the external order, the numerical order, that is important so far as the application of rules is concerned. So in the sequential order, as they are listed, rules, they are applied, Purva and Para. But apart from these two sections, in the entire ādhyāyī, rules apply based on certain principles. And the rule which changes the environment after its operation has privilege over the other rule. And when environment is provided, the rule applies. It is basically modeled after input-output method. I'll explain this. Now coming back to the example, pathati, one reads, pachati or pachati, one cooks. Patha is the verbal root and ti is the affix, suffix added to that. Now in the derivational process, after the verbal root patha, patha, suffix is there. It is taught by the rule vartamane lat, then lat is la suffix is substituted by ti. That gives input for the application of another rule, shap or vikarana, which is to come in between the suffix and the base word building element. So one rule provides input to the output of one rule is input for the application of another rule. And entire derivational process is step by step. Basically, it starts from the lexicons also. Ganapathas, dhatu pathas, they are the lists. Ganapathas are the lists of nouns, nominal basis. Dhatu pathas provide us basis. And they are the inputs for, they are the on which the rules do apply. And the result of application of one rule facilitates the application of another rule. So this is the internal order and not the external order. Sometimes two rules conflict, which is to have privilege, and two rules lead to two different results which are not desired. Then there are certain principles like para rules. When two rules conflict, the later rule in the sequence is to be applied first, is to be applied there. Nitya rule, or invariably which will be applied, is to be applied first. Antaranga, apavada. Apavada is very common principle. Apavada means exception or a specific particular rule against the general rule. So if two rules are there, one is very general and the other is specific, falling in its domain, then the apavada rule has privilege over the utsarga rule. So para, nitya, antaranga, apavada are certain principles for application of rules. So there are certain devices used by Panini in the ādhyāyī to achieve the brevity, to make his model as economical as possible, as short as possible. So he has used the technical terms of algebraic nature. Just now I have referred to them. And meta languages, meta tools are there. They also provide for the brevity, economy for his model. Anuvrutti and adhikara, I'll come to that. They are the specific devices and very effectively used by Panini. Anuvrutti refers to recurrence of certain word or certain expression in the subsequent rules. Anuvrutti. So one atom or one expression is recurring in a manner of ellipsis. Even in day-to-day common language also, we do not use all the words. Some words are understood, ellipsis. And that actually probably has given brevity to our economy, added to the economy of ādhyāyī. Adhikara just now I have referred. So certain expressions are continued in the following rules. This is the ellipsis. And there are certain again principles. Suppose I'll give one example. Guna vruddhi. These are the terms. Iko guna vruddhi. Next rule is na dhatu lopa ardha dhatu ke. So Panini will not repeat the expression iko guna vruddhi in further or next subsequent rules. It is understood by way of ellipsis, by way of anuvrutti, and that adds to the economy or brevity of his work, of his model. Adhikara is almost similar. Siddha and asiddha device, which is very specific to ādhyāyī. Sometimes, just now I refer to that application of one rule provides input or environment for the another rule. But this is blocked in certain context, especially in the last three chapters, last three quarters of the ādhyāyī, Tripadi, last three quarters. One rule, after the application of that rule, whatever the result is there, that result is as if not affected, as if that rule has not operated for the previous rule. So rule X, when applied, it is considered the result of that rule after its application is considered as invalid for the preceding rules. So you cannot use the previous rule after the application of the following rule. You cannot go back in the ādhyāyī. So a rule becomes asiddha, invalid, not effective for the application of other rule, and that is referred to asiddha. So sometimes rules are open. Their application provides input for application of other rules. That is the siddha principle. So that rule is siddha. Iko yan ache yan. When it is affected, the effect is valid for entire ādhyāyī. And sometimes asiddha, they block the application of other rules. So siddha and asiddha devices are there. So very specific principle for application of rules. Now this, in brief, these are the salient features of the model of ādhyāyī. Now basically, this model is descriptive model. It describes the language. It provides for derivation of correct forms, correct usages in a mathematical way, analytical way, explaining explaining the word form into its components. So it is descriptive, it describes. The way of description is to analyze the word and describe it. Vyakarana means to divide the word. Divide and explain. Divide and rule was the policy of Britishers. But the policy of ādhyāyī, the policy of Paanini is to divide and explain. So it describes the language into its components. So it provides comprehensive analysis of the language, explains it into components. It is not a normative grammar. It is not a prescriptive grammar. Had it been a prescriptive grammar, there would have been just list of correct forms. No need to provide rules, explain it into components like that. Dictionary is there which gives you the list of correct forms, and there are models of normative grammars or prescriptive grammars which provide you the list of correct forms. These are the correct forms. You have to the people, the speech community ought to pronounce those only words. But Paanini doesn't give us this kind of finished word list as such, but he explains the form by way of analyzing it into components. That is why it is a descriptive model. But in the due course of time, it assumed the nature of prescriptive grammar. So what is derivable in the Paaninian system was considered as correct, and whatever is not derived, what is not accounted for by Paanini was considered as incorrect, because the influence of his model was such, the degree of his influence was so great that apart from Paanini, whatever is spoken was not considered as correct. So gradually, in the due course of time, it became descriptive or normative grammar, but essentially it is a descriptive model.
Sorry, Prasad ji, time
So-
check. It's almost 1 hour. So,
Yeah, I'll conclude.
Yeah.
So Paanini, by way of his model, he actually certain forms. He refers to variations, language variations, va, vibhasha, anyatarasya. That means optional forms, preferable options, less preferable options, alternative forms, language varieties, regional varieties, Udakcha Vipashaha, at the north belt of, on the north bank of the river Vipash. What happens? What are the peculiarities of that region? So he records them, and whatever is recorded naturally got codified through his text. So what is not Paaninian was considered as incorrect. His influence was so great. So lot of literature produced after Paanini, various epics, various dramas, Puranas, various sciences, they actually follow the language that was described by Paanini. So on one hand, we have, so the influence of Paanini and Patanjali was so great that they almost fettered the language. They fixed certain norms, and that was followed by the literature to come in different centuries after centuries to come. So variety of language was preserved through the model of Paanini and ādhyāyī, through the ādhyāyī. So one variety was codified. That was the effect of Paanini. And till today, actually, what we have is the what we follow, the variety that was described by Paanini is there. So it became itself a model, and post-Paaninian grammatical systems were there. After Paanini also, certain attempts were there. Jainendra Vyakarana, very prominent name, Katantra Vyakarana, Bhopadeva's Mugdhabodha Vyakarana. So we have dozen of models after Paanini's ādhyāyī to come till 14th century. So last but not the least, I will sum up my presentation here by referring to Bloomfield's description. Bloomfield, he says, ādhyāyī is the greatest monument of human intellect, and he has this is the praise or applaud of Paanini's ādhyāyī all over the world, and this is the Paanini has created a model. So how language was preserved because of his model? He gives us entire description of language into into a very finite set of rules, and the very effective model was given, and due to the great influence of this model, the language was preserved. Now the question may arise, how language didn't change after Panini? It changed actually. On one hand, we have development of Sanskrit, many Prakrit languages, Apabhransh languages, and even many new Indo-Aryan languages like Marathi, Hindi, they are developed from Sanskrit only. So Sanskrit actually, further developments of these languages are there. But on one hand, we have preservation of certain variety of language which was employed in Malay literature. Until 19th century, we have this form was preserved due to the ādhyāyī of Paanini. So on one hand, we have continuous unchanged stream of language, and on the other hand, development of language into different Prakrit dialects, Apabhransh dialects, and many new Indo-Aryan languages also. So with these points, I would like to conclude my presentation today. I am profusely thankful to Dr. Prasad Joshi, my friend from childhood, and for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on ādhyāyī. I am also thankful to Dr. Onkar Joshi, my colleague, who helped me in preparing this PowerPoint presentation, and thanks to all of you for your patient listening. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joshi. It was fantastic, very, very technical. Wouldn't even know that such a development would occur with a language so old. So we'll move on to question and answers. If you have a question, any of the audiences, you can raise a hand in Zoom. It's in the reactions menu, or you can type your question in the chat. We have Raghu Katinakare. Go ahead, Raghuji. Please ask a question.
Namaste, Prasad Joshi ji. It was a wonderful explanation for us, breaking it down in a very simple way. Thank you so much for that. I have a comment and a question. I'll start with the comment. The comment is, as people who are interested in the Indic narrative, I think we should continue to say the Vedic Sanskrit is still used, and it's not in disuse, and that it's not archaic in the general sense of the term. I think you are being technical there. I understand. And similarly, the generative grammar also, I think we should say that it sort of originated from Paanini, even though the word is sort of new. Word may be recent, but the actual theory itself is probably even older than Paanini. That's a comment. The question I have is, what can we do in general, all of us? I'm in computer science, IT, whatever. Every time ādhyāyī is mentioned in linguistics, what happens is they usually say ādhyāyī is great, was a great thing, but they never talk about the actual core contributions of it. And they immediately move on to talking about modern linguistic as such. And this is true in India too, in textbooks, in everywhere. Especially only people who studied Sanskrit know about these ādhyāyī, some rules that we are taught is equanimity and so on. What is that we can do as, both the scholars like you and us who are interested in this, to make sure that we highlight the contributions of it equally as other contributions, modern contributions are highlighted?
So actually, the Indian tradition of language study, or Indian linguistic tradition, that needs consideration. It is worth understanding, worth learning in schools and colleges and universities also. So attempts are made. In our university also, Deccan College, we are planning to have course in Indian linguistics. Actually, last year when we celebrated the bicentenary of our institute, we launched a course of 20 lectures highlighting the contribution of Indian tradition to the language study, linguistic study. So attempts are there. And of course, I mean, the expectations are much more. There is curiosity to understand, but there are few centers where the tradition of India is studied. IIT, Hawaii, and JNU and other centers are there where the linguistic study of India finds incorporation in their syllabi and curricula also. And competition, Sanskrit competitional linguistics, you may search also for that, and various attempts are made now. But of course, we have to cater to the need of that. And I agree that there is need for rigorous attempts to be taken. But we can, I mean, the scholars of Sanskrit or grammar, it is their duty to spread over, disseminate the knowledge. But the fact is that many traditional scholars, they are not aware of the modern linguistic idioms. So they have to be trained in the modern linguistics equally, so they can relate and highlight the Indian tradition in a better way. So there has to be, kind of blended courses, and this is a need of the day, that along with modern linguistics, the traditional Indian linguistics is also to be taught. Yeah.
Sunil Kumar, please go ahead. You can unmute.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my question to the distinguished speaker is, what script did Paanini originally write the ādhyāyī in? Because he is generally assumed to be now, according to researchers in the area which is now Pakistan, Swat Valley of close to Lahore, and Western Indologists say that the Brahmi script came to India via Mesopotamia, and Brahmi script later led to the development of the lipis or scripts of many Indian languages. So what is your opinion on that? And they say that Paanini lived in some vassal state of the Persian Empire. So I just wanted to know what the researchers' opinion of what script was originally used for the ādhyāyī, and
Yeah.
non-Paaninian usage also was seen in over the centuries after Paan. Just a general question. Thank you.
Yeah. So coming to the script, that is entirely a different issue. Surely at the time of Paanini, writing system was there, because Paanini refers to words like lipi, Yavanani, and other scripts are, I mean, the writing technology or the script, Paanini refers to some scripts. But ādhyāyī, or for that matter, any other traditional work, originally, I mean, we do not have written evidence in those early days. Basically, it was oral tradition. The ādhyāyī was transmitted from one generation to another in the oral tradition. So it was preserved in the Maukhika Parampara or oral tradition. I'm not exactly aware about the first manuscript of ādhyāyī, and probably there lies the answer in which it was written. But Devanagari, Sharada, Brahmi, Grantha, there are various scripts in which Indian literature or Sanskrit literature is to be found, and there are many courses on manuscriptology also. So in different scripts were employed, Sharada, Devanagari, and Brahmi, and many other scripts are there, Grantha. So not only Ashtadhyayi, but other even Vedas, we have the manuscripts of all these works in different scripts. So Ashtadhyayi was handed down in oral tradition, but the script in which it was written, there are several scripts in which Ashtadhyayi probably was written. So I need to verify the earliest occurrence in the manuscript. So I will come to that sometimes later. Now coming to the forms which are non-Paaninian, of course, you will find so many non-Paaninian forms in the literature, even Kalidasa's, Bhasa's literature also, we have certain forms which are not accountable in the Paaninian system. But commentators somehow try to explain those forms by using various ways also. That is there. So it is, I mean, non-Paaninian forms are which are not accountable in that system. They were also employed in the literature, no doubt. But prominently, at utmost care was there to use the correct forms which are described, which are derivable in the Paaninian system. That is there.
Samirji, go ahead.
Namaste. I just had a question about the exact date of Panini. What is the method used for calculating in which year he has published all this work?
Yeah, scholars argue differently. That's what I said. But certain references, I mean, internal evidence is there. Certain references are there in the Ashtadhyayi, which provide some rough idea about his date. Kumara Shramana refers to the Buddha tradition. So Panini refers to them. That means surely his work is coming after Buddha's period. So certain grounds are there based on which this assumption are forwarded by different scholars. So based on the evidence, it is assumed that Panini belongs to the 4th century BCE, because there are Buddhism or Buddha lexicons or words which pertain to Buddhism or Buddhist tradition. Based on that, it is inferred that Panini was there after Buddha's period. So based on internal evidences, this comes.
Patiently listening to the very, very technical and very interesting talk. One of the rare ones that we have here. Dr. Joshi, thank you so much for presenting today. Hopefully you'll come back soon with another topic and maybe details on Panini itself. And thank you everyone, and we'll meet again soon in a couple of weeks. Thank you all.